we're here to protect you and the ones that you love. It's a good feeling to know that our efforts aren't going unnoticed.
It actually brought tears to my eyes to know that we have this support.
You're welcome. I must just say you're welcome. It's stressful, but we're not going anywhere.
All right, welcome to another edition of our Bucknell University Head Coaches Panel presented by our friends and partners at Geisinger. We want to thank, of course, everybody at Geisinger for all they're doing each and every day on the front lines and stepping up to help our community and keep us all safe. This is an opportunity for us to hear from some of our coaches about how they and their program are responding during this pandemic and what they're doing in terms of communication with not only their student athletes, but maybe their alumni as well. Today's panel features four of our most veteran head coaches. Between the four of them, they have a combined 79 years of experience here at Bucknell. Our first coach is the head coach of our men's soccer program, Brendan Nash, who's completing his 24th season at Bucknell, and the last 21 of which have been as the head coach. Frank Fedorjaka, the head coach of our men's lacrosse program, has been at Bucknell for nearly 24 years, including the last 15 as the head coach. And Dan Schinnerer joins us as he's wrapping up his 15th season as a head coach of the men's and women's swimming and diving programs. And finally, our final coach this afternoon is Heather, who's been with the baseball program for 16 years, the last 8 as the head coach. So first of all, I want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time out to join us, and we appreciate that. I'm going to get right into it with our first question, and that's simply one that is different for each and every program. When the news of all this broke back in March, and certainly the news that Bucknell was not going to be returning for a spring semester, and then eventually the news that the Patriot League was shutting things down and all of intercollegiate athletics would be shutting down, where were each of you? How did you hear the news? And then on the backside of that, how did you relay that news to your programs? And I'll start with Brendan first, since you guys were already through your competitive season, so it's certainly a different situation for you than it might have been for Frank or Scott or even Dan. So Brendan, how did you hear about everything?
I heard about it. To be honest with you, I really wasn't on top of the situation like President Brotman was. So I was having a meal with some friends, and all of a sudden I checked my email, and I thought, we better address this. We better address this right away. So I immediately excused myself from the meal to start trying to address it with our staff and our team. And more importantly, when we got back from spring break, we were going to get into our non-traditional season. So before anything went on the website, I wanted to contact all the teams that we were going to be playing in the spring to let them know, hey, just a heads up, we might not be able to play. Then I made a pretty poor decision of mine, because when President Brotman said he wanted everybody out of Lewisburg, my first thoughts were, okay, go back to New Jersey and spend the time there. And after a few days there, and I was watching the numbers go up and up and up in New Jersey, and they really weren't doing much in Union County, I said, Mom and Dad, why don't you get in the car and come with me? And my mom and dad, and Coach Heather knows my mom and dad pretty well, they're super prepared for it all. So my mom had been at every supermarket, so they just said, no, we're going to hunker down here. And my mom said, just call every day. The unfortunate thing is we didn't get to have any face-to-face with our young men, and especially the seniors. I know we'll talk about that a little bit later, but everything was over the phone, through text, through email, and you can't really sense the emotion on that. So, yeah, and now I'm back in Lewisburg, all by myself in the house.
And Dan, where were you when the news broke?
Kind of similar to Brendan, it's a different season for swimming and diving than for Scott and for Frank. And so I actually remember pretty vividly, because I was in Clark, actually just finished up working out that afternoon, had gotten off one of the bikes and saw that email. And I wasn't shocked. I don't think we were just wrapping up our championships. And so kind of was in my own little world for the last month. So definitely had not tracked this issue closely. But earlier that day, there had been news that the YMCA was shutting down its spring national swim meet. And so that was a pretty big move. And I think the precursor of, things to come. And so there was this sense of things were beginning to happen. Interestingly, as you know, the PIAA, the Pennsylvania High School State Meet, was set to start the next day at Bucknell University. And so not only was I getting off a bike at the Clark, I was looking down at a massive pool full of kids, high school age kids that were getting ready to start their state championships the next day. You just started to wonder what the impact was going to be across the board. And so for our team, we had finished the Patriot League championships. We did have a handful of swimmers that were looking to continue on to some other championship meet opportunities, particularly in long course, being an Olympic year, what was supposed to be an Olympic year. And so there were some things going on, but for the bulk of our team, they feel fortunate that they got their season in. And so while there was certainly disappointment and confusion and everything that, those emotions that came out in those first few days, one of the things that we talked about, with the team and certainly even with our seniors is that there's a spectrum of experiences and they're all valid and all those emotions are valid, but there's a difference of finishing your season, getting championships in, and losing, your springtime as opposed to losing your spring season like Coach Nash. And then certainly for Coach Heather and Coach Fedorjaka, to lose, that's essentially your season, those are just different experiences. And then even beyond that, as much as we love sports and are disappointed to lose that, it's also important to keep perspective of, what's really important in that, there are real challenges, and you talk to our alumni that are in New York City, those kind of stories hit home too. And so I think one of the things we've just tried to emphasize in the communication to our team is, understand where you fit on this on the spectrum of experience in this situation.
That's a perfect segue to Scott and Frank. And Scott, as Dan alluded, you were in, as was Frank, in the middle of your traditional competitive season when the news broke. So how did you take that and relay that to your team?
Sure. We were coming back from Florida when news started to hit a little bit the night before. We received an email the next morning, about 20 minutes before a team meeting or a team breakfast. So I was able to get in front of our team and point. You were still going to be able to play through that weekend. We had Navy hoping to still be able to play. It seemed like it was going to work out. So we headed out to practice, and we still practiced that day. And about halfway through practice, we found out that we weren't going to be able to play. And we turned it into a celebration of our seniors. And, our guys have a running argument who would win a game, pitchers versus position players. Position players had to pitch, and the pitchers had to hit. We've argued about that for years. So we settled on the field, and that was our senior day. And I was proud of the way the guys responded to get that type of news, and we responded with fellowship and getting together as a team and celebrating our seniors and settling an argument, and ended up the position players won.
And Frank, certainly with you as well. You guys are off to a tremendous start, and everything broke, and that's a tough pill to swallow for any spring sport. But in the position you guys were in, had to be doubly as tough.
Yeah, it was tough. Ours was a lot more. I look at it as a progression because it was obviously during spring break, and we were home for all of spring break. So we were more dialed in because we were with each other every day. All we had to focus on was our opponent in practice. And we were actually still dealing with Boston University, who had 9 guys sick at the time. We were supposed to play them on the first Saturday of spring break. And that game kept getting postponed by 1 day at a time. So we were preparing, and then we had to alter our preparations for them. And every day it was a different, way to prepare. The game was supposed to be Saturday, now it's Sunday. Then it was supposed to be Sunday, now it's Monday. Then it was supposed to be Monday, now it's Tuesday. So the week was a really hard week for our guys. Now, none of their guys had COVID-19, but we still never played that game. So then we now turned our preparations to Loyola. And of course, President Brodman had just announced that we were going to go remote for the rest of the term. So that was a big shocker. So that happened, and Pavlechko came out to practice to let our team know at the end of practice that we were going remote, but don't worry, we're going to have all of our spring sports stay here on campus for the rest of the term. So our guys were floored, but kind of happy at least that we still had our season. And that was maybe on like a Tuesday of spring break. So now we're focused on Loyola. And then we hear an hour or two later that the Ivies canceled their season. So that wasn't a great feeling because we had a feeling what might happen next. And then, of course, Thursday morning, they canceled our season. But then they said we could still play our last game on Saturday. So that was mixed emotions because obviously our season was going to be canceled, but we could still have one more contest. And so as we were preparing for that, our guys got their ankles taped and ready to go. And they were all dressed and ready to walk out to practice. And that's when we got the final word that our season was canceled for good and no game on Saturday. And so we pivoted and made a call to have our end of the year team meeting, team celebration, break the news to the team in the terrace room, which is where we always have our end of the year banquet. So our whole team went up to the terrace room in their cleats and their helmets and their sticks. And we just kind of, pivoted over there. And of course they took their cleats off. We went up and had a very emotional hour-long meeting about the end of the season and how maybe we should handle it. And also to talk about the great year that we were having and to honor the seniors a little bit. So it was, as you can imagine, a very emotional meeting. And then our guys left there and they walked through the Christie Matheson gates one more time as a group in their practice gear, and then went out to the field and just kind of threw the ball around and talked about stuff. And there were no coaches out there, of course, and then that was it. So we were actually able to see the whole thing build up. We were with our guys the whole time. It was a very emotional roller coaster type of week, which ended in a very dark way. So it was tough.
So obviously it was devastating news for all of our student athletes and more so for the spring sports. But in addition to that, the senior student athletes, for them, it was really tough. So I don't think any of your programs were able to have your end of the year banquets before this happened. Have you done anything for your seniors, or are you planning to do anything to celebrate your seniors? And Scott, we'll start with you. I know you mentioned that you had done something on the field there, and you might want to talk about what you did with that and where it wound up, which was great publicity for your program.
Sure. Yeah. We kind of did an impromptu senior day out there on the field, one more last time. We took some video and added it to Twitter and things kind of went from there. Scott Van Pelt on Sports Center was running a senior night promotion type deal that he was celebrating seniors across the country, and he recognized, or people from ESPN recognized what we did that day and honored what we did as part of Sports Center. So pretty cool for those guys to see themselves, on Sports Center and get some recognition, for what they are, the camaraderie that they had, and the 4 years that they put together for Bucknell. We've continued to honor them. They've been a part of our team meetings as we're going through all this. They have some adjustments to make, a lot of decisions to make too on the next steps with having another year of eligibility. But we plan on that at graduation, honoring those guys along with their seniors in other sports as well too. But find a way to bring it all together and honor 9 great seniors that really contributed a lot to the program.
And Frank, you had 5 seniors. What have you been able to do anything for your seniors? And I know, same as Scott mentioned, you're working through a potential extra year eligibility for those guys, and they have decisions to make on that. But how are you celebrating your guys?
Yeah, so very, very similar to Scott. We were going to do that with our senior group at graduation, which hopefully is, we're still, I think, trying to figure that out. But, it was a very emotional way to end our season. And so we could not do anything with the team, obviously. And and we had 5 seniors, 4 of which are going to try to play next year. So they're not really seniors now. So it's kind of like an oxymoron where 2 of them are going to play elsewhere, and 2 of them are trying to stay at Bucknell, and 1 of them's just going out into the business world. So it would be inappropriate to have a Zoom meeting and wish these guys well when 2 of them may not even be moving on. They may be coming back to Bucknell. So it's kind of stinks. I mean, we have not done anything yet because we just don't know what that situation is going to bring.
And Dan, obviously, with the men's and women's programs combined, you've got a few more seniors than just 5. But what have you been able to do? Or are you planning anything special with your team?
Well, we're, again, kind of in the middle of it, or in the middle of the experience, in that we did have a senior night, on the day of our senior meet. We do a senior dinner with the coaches. And so we've had the opportunity to celebrate our seniors to an extent. Now, for our program, and I'm sure it's similar to a lot of programs, the end of season banquet is very special, and it's a chance to honor the success of the season, but especially we have some special traditions where we really recognize the seniors for everything they've done. And we've always kind of used that because, senior night is special, but in a sport like swimming, swimming and diving, where so much rests on championships, you don't have that final moment until that meet is through. And so our banquet is very special, and we haven't been able to do that. Like the other coaches have mentioned, we're kind of holding out hope that we could do something perhaps around the commencement time. But if that doesn't come together, we'll certainly explore some other avenues to fully recognize a very special senior class.
And Brendan, I know for the men's soccer program, typically late April is a very special weekend for your program with what you have planned during that weekend. Maybe talk a little bit about what you did this past weekend in lieu of not being able to be together.
Well, first, I'd just like to comment that I think out of all the student athletes, our seniors were pretty lucky with their situation because they got to finish their 4-year careers. And we have a couple traditions that we already have in the program that when you're done with your senior year, we go and play the men's soccer team, the men's coaches, the women's soccer team, the women's coaches. We put together a co-ed team and we go play soccer on Wednesday nights over at Sports Zone. So they got to have that closure, so to speak, because they started playing with us, seeing the coaches in a different light. The only unfortunate part is we had 2 teams, and the Wednesday after spring break was supposed to be the championship game, and we were going to see who had bragging rights because I said I had the better team. Coach Brown said he had the better team because neither team lost during the season. But this weekend was going to be our very big weekend, this past weekend coming up. So it was supposed to be our golf outing on Friday, our alumni game on Saturday, our banquet on Saturday night, where we send off our seniors and they give their speeches. But when you take the whole weekend into it, we tried to salvage it as much as we could. And I really say kudos to our alums. And I'm going to send out a thank you to them. But I sent out an email letting them know how disappointing it was for me. And we were really going to take a pretty big fundraising hit. And Todd, you're going to be happy to see in the next week that we did pretty well fundraising over this weekend because a lot of our alumni stepped up and said, hey, it's tough times, but we want to help you out as much as we can right now. But we'd much rather would have had all those guys on campus. On Friday night, we did a Zoom, and with the Zoom, it was pretty much the New York City guys. And we have so many guys in New York City, and they're on complete lockdown. Some guys haven't left their apartment in a month. And the cool thing about that is I was on the screen, and we had all the different faces on the screen. But a guy that graduated in 2008 is talking to a guy that graduated in 2017, like they were actually teammates because they had that Bucknell bond. And the seniors were allowed to be part of that Zoom because technically they're done, and we let them see everybody at a little bit looser level. As far as what we want to do for them, our senior speeches are pretty important because the guys get to thank their families, their teammates. So we have a couple things. I've told them, if their families are here, if we do have the July 17th graduation, then we'll do something as a small group. But what our big thoughts are with Connor O'Brien being inducted into the Hall of Fame, let's do this season's team banquet. So it makes more sense for the guys to come back to campus, for their parents to come back. So it won't just be one banquet. had a season. They could get a game in, they could get the Hall of Fame in, and then they could get their banquet in. So that's kind of what we're thinking about doing. But at this point, everything's fingers crossed still, right?
Exactly. We all hope that we return to some form of normalcy and we're back on campus in the fall and ready to go. Leads into the next question for each of you guys, and it's about communication. So not only how are you communicating with your student athletes, and each of you has a fairly large roster to worry about. So do you separate that up among your assistants? Do you do it by position, by swim event, Dan? Or how do you guys communicate with your teams right now and keep them connected to the program? And then maybe what types of communications, as Brendan mentioned, are you having with your alumni? I'm hearing some great stories about Zoom events and happy hour events. And if there's anything that's positive that's come out of this situation at all, is a lot of people that haven't been connected in the past have been able to reconnect. So let's start, Scott, with you first. What kind of communication have you been able to do?
Sure. With our players, we kind of treated it as, off season, and we created, player development plans for each of our guys. My position coaches, did that, and we sent that out to them. We've had weekly Zoom meetings, where we get together as a team or, a small group. Maybe it's pitchers in one, position players in a different one, something like that. We also keep up with them through, group meetings and making sure, we're sending them different things that we're seeing online that other people are doing, and creating ways, for them to continue to work and continue to get better, and just trying to stay active with that, communicating as much as we can, individually. I think that's best. But they love getting on the Zooms together and seeing each other, and it's a good time whenever we do that. I'm proud of the way they've handled that too. We've had many guys, go out there and we've had mounds built. Two guys built cages in their backyard. They're finding a way to continue to work and get better. It's great to see.
And Dan, what about your program?
We kind of have built through several kind of levels of communication. And so initially, after everybody was through campus and heading home, we just picked up phones and made sure everybody got to where they were supposed to be, that they were settled, that they were okay, that their families were okay, that they were starting to get to the online learning. And so that was kind of the first outreach, was just calling everybody. And then as we've all become Zoom experts in the last month, we started to use that as a tool. With a team of 60, there's only so much you can do in an all-team Zoom. We did a few things like that. We've definitely broken it down to met with classes and found that was a great way to connect. And as Scott said, I think the team itself has been very creative with Zooming each other, and so not even just relying on the coaches. And so we've kind of looked at it as coaches. We wanted to bring the team together at least once a week in some capacity, but they've really done a great job of connecting with each other as well through this time. Unlike some of the other sports, Scott talked about people building mounds in their backyard. No one has gone out and started to dig a hole and fill it with water yet. So we've had some challenges, but that's one of the things we've talked about in our Zoom calls. Our sport is unique in that, it's difficult. You can't just go in the driveway and shoot hoops or kick a ball against the wall or throw a ball against the wall. We've got some limits, and with pools across the country closed, people have gotten creative, both what they can do out of the water, as well as you see those that are fortunate enough to have, little pools in their backyard, tether cords, and swimming in place, and swimming in rivers and wetsuits and things like that. We're all just kind of getting creative with that. So it's been fun to see that. And I think there's been a measure of just bringing people together as they get creative in figuring out ways to continue to exercise, to get some stroke cycles in. And that's even gone up into the alumni. And so similar to Brendan, we did a Zoom happy hour with a number of the alum in New York City. And that was something to hear. Brendan mentioned it, city in lockdown. We have alums that are on the front lines. So hearing their stories was impactful.
And Scott, let's go back to you for a second. I know you've done some things with the alums too, and you probably wanted to mention that. After we get to you, we'll go to Brendan and we can talk about the successful watch party that Brendan has had and some of his other things. But let's go back to you, Scott, for the alumni piece.
Yeah, sure. I've been keeping up with the alumni, especially on an individual basis, but and a few emails along the way, but we've had some watch parties as well. Patriot League Network has done a couple things. Connor Van Hoos's no-hitter was kind of doing a Sunday night baseball, and the 2018 championship team got together. I'm trying to find ways to get some of the even older footage somehow online where we watch and get everybody together. It's really a great time. Everybody kind of clamoring for it, and I'm hearing guys are doing alums are doing that on their own, and love to be a part of it. It's great to see everybody connecting.
And Brendan, how did your watch party go for the game that you had on?
That one went very well, and what ended up happening is it was scheduled for the time of the game, which was an overtime game, so it's longer than a usual soccer game. So it was about a 2-hour Zoom, and when it was done, some of the guys said, "Coach, will you stick on the Zoom?" Well, I was on the Zoom with those guys for 2 more hours that night, and because it went so well, some of the other guys, they said, "Coach, why don't you do this with some of the other championship teams?" And I said, "That's a great idea. However, I don't know how to set up a Zoom." So I needed to get some help from my assistants to set it up. And each one of those went really well. I think the best one was Fridays, because everybody would have loved being out here for the golf outing. So, they just had a really good time of connecting with each other, having some fun. I would say this, if you're listening and you have not been on one of your team Zooms, you probably want to get on it, because if you're not on it, they are going to rip you apart. And they're going to tell the worst stories about you, and you have no way of defending yourself in that situation. So I would free myself up for any sport, for any Zooms moving forward in the future. Do you want me to talk about the team at all, Todd? Or
Sure, yeah.
So for the team, again, I had to ramp up my game with technology. And when they first came back, I just grabbed my 2 assistants and I said, "Okay, let's reach out to everybody, see if they're safe, what they're up to, how their families are." And then from that, we broke it up to each week, one of us would call 7 players, 7 players, 7 players, and then we rotated it. And what Coach Matt Brown did one time is he did a Zoom for all 7 of his calls. And when he finished the call, he came back and he said, "Coach Nash, I think they enjoyed seeing each other. I think we should do it this way instead of just one-on-one calls." So we started doing it that way, and then we found an app called House Party. And House Party, you can have up to 8 people. So it worked perfect for us, because it would be 1 coach and 7 players. And you can see all their faces on your phone screen. Why we liked using that more than Zoom is it has some different things that you can do with it. So we would finish each session playing trivia at the end. So we get to see a trivia game. And I've won more than I lost against those guys, but they got the laugh. And we're actually going to have one tomorrow is the one that I'm going to have with my group. Hopefully I can win that one.
Coach Fedorjaka, how's the communication been going for you in the lacrosse program?
Yeah, it's going well. We just had our last Zoom last Monday as a team, and that went really, really well. The guys enjoyed that, and it's nice because certain guys log in a little bit earlier than others, and you can ask them each how they're doing and what's the latest going on and how their families are. So I think that was really, really great to touch base with them individually, but then also as a group, and kind of hear the guys' different stories on how they're working out and how their dad's building them a gym in their basement, and what they're doing with their. In one case, one guy is playing catch. He's down in Georgia. He plays catch with his brother, who is a baseball player, and so the baseball guy has a glove, and then our guy has a lacrosse stick, and they play catch. And the kid catches it with his glove and throws it with his arm, and then our guy, uses his stick. So there's some creativity going on with that kind of stuff. And in terms of keeping up with our guys, we do it by offense and defense. It's not necessarily by position, like close defense, short stick, D-midi, things like that. Our off-season workouts are very, very similar. It's a lot of work to get bigger, stronger, faster, with better agility, and then a lot of it is wall ball. So where you play catch. Our sport is fortunate, similar to basketball, where you can go out and shoot hoops on your own and maybe make a lot of improvement. Lacrosse is very similar, where you can hit a wall and do lots of different things just by yourself playing wall ball. And then in terms of our alumni, it's been really good for me because I've taken the route of reaching out to them individually and sending them a personal email for the older guys. And that's been really great because it allows me to reach out in an empathetic way where there's no agenda. And it's been really great for me personally and hopefully for them as well. And then for the younger guys, like the guys that graduated in the last 10 years, I've sent out a text thread to the whole class all together, which has been great. And that's usually about one a day. And then we go back and forth all day. There might be 12 or 13 guys going back and forth, telling everybody how they're doing. And so you can kind of see it as a group. So it helps bring them together, but also allows for some funny comments and some good stories. And I think they enjoy being reached out together as a group, you know, the class of 17 or the class of 18 or whatever. And they're real appreciative of just a simple reach out.
So last question I have for you guys, and again, thank you for taking the time today to join us, is one that's probably pretty big on all of your agendas right now, and that's the world of recruiting has been turned literally upside down with what's going on. Obviously, no intercollegiate play, but obviously no scholastic activity, so no high school events, no recruiting, events for you guys to attend, no camps. Everything's been canceled. So how are each of you approaching your recruiting at this point? And I know probably video is bigger than anything now, but we'll start with Dan. And Dan, it's a little different with you because a time is a time. But how are you approaching the changes in the recruiting?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point in that, in our sport, we definitely start with some very quantitative measures in times. But what has hit our sport is the fact that it's a lot about progressions. And it's not something where, oh, you had a really good game in January, that was your best. Our sport is built around a seasonal progression. And so many kids lost the pinnacle of their season. Month of March and April wiped away championships. There are lots of high schoolers out there that put in 6 months of work and didn't get to show the results of that 6 months of work. And so that's been something unique in sport where, you have, and we have coaches and the recruiting side of it are reaching out and talking. There's been a lot of dialogue, but it's, again, in a spectrum of experience, it's sad to hear so many juniors in high school talk about, I don't know what happened. I don't know what would have happened. I think I would have done this. I think I would have been at a scoring level in your conference, and they don't have those results to show us. And so it's a little bit of a challenge. And one of the things, as I said, we start with the quantitative, but we definitely look at other more qualitative things. And so looking at improvement trends is important to us now. Looking at videos of stroke is important. And so we just had a lot of dialogue, but it's definitely a challenge in our sport, because so many swimmers out there don't get to show the results of, say, their junior year to us. And so I think all coaches, swim coaches, are navigating that because it is a different thing than, watching game film of somebody and seeing them at their best. A lot of people lost that opportunity to show themselves at their best.
And Scott, with you and baseball being a spring sport and a lot of that wiped away, as Dan alluded to, conversation and trust in those coaches, I guess that has really picked up a lot.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely have ramped up the summer ball aspect of that, talking to coaches, kind of putting together our list for the summer. We had a pretty good list of guys that we were looking to go see in the spring and close to offering. So, tough to manage that. And like, do we offer, has he gotten better? That's a question, that is hard to answer right now. And, everybody in college baseball is getting an extra year. So that's added another layer to it. All of our guys, kind of consider, continuing to play. I'm fielding calls from, other colleges about our guys just about every day. One of our guys, Jack Simpson, just committed to pitch at Long Beach State. So, dealing with, with that. And then on the other end too, that's causing a trickle down. There's, transfer portal is as big as ever. There's 4 or 5 kids contacting us every day, expressing interest in Bucknell and exploring that. We're not really set up, well with the limited grad school options, but maybe there's some transfer options in there that we can benefit from, and still exploring that and trying to find any way that we continue to to get our team better. That's going to be a challenge for for young guys in baseball or spring sports for the next 3-4 years. You're going to be coming in. I know one school has brought in 11 grad transfers, and if we did that, what kind of experience is that for our freshmen? So we don't have that option really, and it'll be a better experience for our younger guys than a lot of programs where there's a lot of extra older guys that they're going to have to contend with. So we're trying to pitch that to the the up and coming guys, that it's going to be a good atmosphere you to come into. Nothing's changed, and be ready to compete for playing time right away.
And Frank, in the world of lacrosse, typically or traditionally, it's you're looking at kids when they're really young during their high school progression. How has it changed with this pandemic?
So far, it has not hit our sport too hard yet. It will over the summer, but for us, we recruit guys and try to get them committed early in their junior year in high school. So we were able to get our class finished by November of this past fall, that guys that are juniors in high school. So we have a month in November where we can go on the road and recruit on weekends. And so we were able to focus on guys that were sophomores in high school in terms of evaluating. So we've got a huge pool of what we consider top prospects that we were able to focus on, for the whole month of November, and from whatever we had left from the summer. But going into this summer, we would typically evaluate the guys that are rising juniors, and hopefully we get to do some of that. I know a lot of our events that were supposed to be in June are pushed off now into July. So the good news is they haven't canceled them, but they've rescheduled them. So I think we're all holding out hope that for parts of July and maybe early August, we'll be able to cram in all of the recruiting and evaluating that we need to do. And then very similar to Scott, our sport has a lot of transfers happening right now. And, as he alluded to, Bucknell is not really a 50-year transfer option, but undergrads that are getting, I think, frustrated with their university taking on a bunch of grad students are looking, sophomores in college and freshmen in college are seeing the handwriting on the wall where all these guys are coming in. And so they're looking to transfer, as younger guys. So we are handling and dealing with some of those, which is exciting. But at the same time, for us, we're not really taking advantage of the extra year that the NC2A is granted. So we'll, in terms of graduates, but we'll try to take advantage of it in terms of undergraduates.
And Brendan, I know you're feeling pretty good about the recruiting class you have coming in next fall, but where does men's soccer look to for the future in terms of recruits?
Well, it's going to be interesting because in soccer it changed quite a bit as we went through this pandemic, but I try and focus on the positives as much as possible with this. And the one positive is all 200 college soccer teams are in the same situation. So it's not like other people can get evaluations live that we aren't getting. Not quite as ahead of the game as Frank, but we did have a couple of early commitments from a junior class, and we try and bring our official visits in for a basketball game. So we did get a lot of our junior recruits on campus for their official visits, but we don't have strong evaluations of them. And as soon as this all happened and President Brahman sent the email, our staff was actually scheduled to go to Las Vegas for a huge recruiting event. And I said to him, I said, listen, we've got to wrap our head around this, turn the cars around, turn your car around, come back. We'll have plenty of other opportunities in the future. So I think I made part of a good decision, but the other one, I don't know what's going to happen with that. For the players, it's making them nervous. I'm getting a lot more emails, and I'm sure the other coaches are the same. We're getting a lot more links to videos than we ever had before. The good thing is our staff has time to look at those videos. So we can, but it's not the same as a live event. one of the live events, one of the best live events for us for evaluations is our summer soccer camp. And at this point, that doesn't look like a probability. So all those kids that would have come on campus got to know about Bucknell University, the dorms and the cafeteria food and our players and whatnot. We're probably going to miss that opportunity. So it's going to be very tough. But as you alluded to, we're very happy with the class that's going to be coming in. But when all this came about, a lot of the kids play academy and they don't play high school soccer. So halfway through all this, the academy system announced that they are ceasing operations. So ceasing operations for the juniors, they're eventually going to have opportunities to get to another team in another league and get back on their feet. But for our seniors, what opportunity are they now going to have to play before they come into their first semester of college soccer? So we're trying to wrap our mind around that because they can't have tryouts. There's nothing that they can do. So how far behind are they going to be when it comes to August? And it's definitely a concern. But like I said, it's not a Bucknell problem. It's a college athletics problem. So we all have to make those adjustments. It's just not us that has to make the adjustments.
Well, certainly this trying time has made it difficult and for everyone and has put a lot of doubt in the minds of everyone everywhere. But you all seem to be doing great in terms of keeping your teams together. And I thank you guys for joining us today. And I hope that you all remain safe and that your family stays safe and healthy. I want to thank again Geisinger for allowing us to do this. And for those of you at home watching, thanks for watching. Stay safe and stay Bison strong. Have a great day.
Go Bison.
Thank you.